Does your boyfriend break up with you? Is your affair not here anymore to carry you? Is your boyfriend break up with you? You can't pocket affair? Kaylee. You understand that no one at home loves you?
Check your mind.
That's actually true.
Like, seriously, sit with me and have a conversation. You know that nobody cares if you die tomorrow, right? Like, you know
no friends.
It's a fact.
No
Like,
one-
if you
no
die,
one- no
let's
one-
say you're playing your computer right now, you're in a basement. If you die, you'll rot there for months and maybe years. Because nobody knows you exist. You understand? Like, it's not even a conversation. That's just a
Let
fact.
that sink in.
It's just a fact. That you'd sit there and rot because no one cares.
Hey, Sig, come here.
There is a problem in gaming community that just got spoken about enough. It's not exclusive to Overwatch or by any means of gaming and online only. It means that in fact of obviously a byproduct of our society. But unlike the world at large, there's a very little discussion of this topic within our game and indeed esports in general, the sexism. Now, as I mentioned, this topic, there's probably three ways in which anyone watching will respond. The first will be the group of people who either experience it or already recognize it as a problem. The second will be the people who are unaware of its severity or haven't given it much thought and are open to hearing more about it. The third are the people who feel that it's most definitely isn't a problem or that it's a problem that largely exaggerated. Today I want to speak directly to the people in two categories 2 and 3, because they probably represent the majority of the player base, and if something is to change in gaming, then it needs to involve everyone. Now, all I ask from anyone who feels that they fit in these categories is that you listen and watch until the end of the video before you make up your mind. I want to talk about the problem that is why we need to do something.
You guys hear me? Shut up, you troll! I'll find you now! Fuck you! I will fuck you! Do you want a little brother? Do you want a little brother? I will fuck your mom! And I will give you a little brother!
Or you can just
Motherfucker!
ignore me entirely. But please do watch with an open mind, because this is really important. What you heard from the start of the video and what you will hear throughout the rest of our real encounters the women have gone through. If at any point you find them tough to listen to secondhand, imagine how tough it might be to actually be the target of this kind of horrible language. Now, immediately, I know a lot of people's gut instinct will say, well, that's the nature of online gaming. Everyone receives abuse and toxicity when they are playing a competitive game. Well, and this is absolutely true. Everyone at some point playing online competitive video games will have someone say some really mean stuff to them. But not all abuse is equal, and the types of abuse that you will hear during this video, and indeed the types of abuse that women face regularly while playing online games that are part of something far more concerning. There's some insults you can brush off as just standard online toxicity, and then there are others which is a lot more insidious, a lot more personal, and which make you feel fundamentally unwelcome to gaming as a whole. Female gamers are consistently the target of a specific set of attacks and comments, and each of them are their own form of malicious. I want to just start by spelling out what these and why they're so alarming. Well, the first is perhaps the stereotypical of gamers, the sexual comments. Now, for a lot of people, when they think of a gamer, they think of a man who sits at home all day in his mother's basement because he has no friends and or never been of interest to women in real life. Anyone who actually gamed and made friends online will know this is completely baseless. It relies on a very outdated view of gamers as a social outcast, where in fact gaming is no longer a part of a shame. It's mainstream. It's cool. Like what you have seen a while ago with the Ellen show. It's already been worldwide mainstream. in our community and in the industry as well. Everyone games now, from kids to their parents to even their grandparents. And yet, despite how diverse and expertise gaming has become, the culture of the community hasn't necessarily adjusted to its new demographics. Very frequently, just the sound of a female voice of the thought that a girl might be on a team seems to ignite some primal sense of stupidity, almost large section of the male player base. I probably don't have to explain why this is unwelcome for the female players who receive it. Having some anonymous person hit on you just because they reckon you to have the right biology for their sexual preference is creepy. It doesn't really make sense. Why would someone try to come on to you when they all know is that you're possibly female? Is the only bar that has to be passed? And yet it happens, and when someone is on the receiving end, it makes them feel an object, not a person. Just means to an end, just a set of body parts to be projected upon. And questions like, where are you from? And can I be your boyfriend? Are particularly intimidating in a world where men tracking, stalking, and violating the privacy of women as part of their sexual advances is a very real problem. When studies have found that as many as 75% of women have been followed home by a stranger or at least once, it's not paranoid to say that what might seem like innocent pieces of banter to some are actually really scary to hear. Beyond the emotional degradation, there is the possibility of a very real threat. Overall, it reflects really poorly on male gamers because it does scream of the behavior of someone who must never interact with women in real life. Why else would you need to make a pass at someone just because they sound like a woman? The other kind of comments that women receive are a lot more toxic and require a little bit more unpacking, that they are in their nature very predictable. This category generally culminates in some version of, you're a girl, therefore you can't play or be good at video games or any mobile games. Sometimes these are crude and fairly cliche, and the other times they're much more deep-rooted and malicious. Now, rather than just condemn these actions with words, I want to approach them with science. If the position being put forward by these people is that women can't do or don't play, then let's look at the substance at this claim and bear with me while we go on a little tangent. According to the study conducted by the Entertainment Software Association, 46% of US gamers are female. So right off the bat, it's pretty clear that women do in fact play video games. What's interesting though is the type of games women are playing. If we narrow our criteria down to millennial gamers, those aged 18 to 34, who are in truth the primary consumers of mobile games, then racing games are a unanimously popular genre among men and women. However, while male gamers overwhelmingly gravitate towards multiplayer action-based games, female gamers are much more likely to be interested in puzzle and party games, often on their own. What conclusion can we draw from this, if any? Well, we might argue that this furthers the idea that boys will be boys, that men like games with violence and destructions, and women prefer games with a softer touch that focus on problem solving and creative thinking. Some might look at this and point to biology and that say that this is the natural order of things, that men and women are both wired to behave this way. They would argue, and that is a simple evolution. However, it would be more accurate to say that these speak to our cultural norms and what kind of things we encourage men and women to like and dislike. For example, addressing the appeal for men in online FPS games, we might look at how men are encouraged to be assertive and competitive and told that qualities such as this display strength of character. These are qualities that make men suited to leadership and governance, roles which are still dominated by men in most countries around the world. Nice guys, meanwhile, who are agreeable and less confrontational, are seen as less competent and less suited for managerial roles. On the other hand, women who displayed sign of leadership are seen as less likable and less hireable, even they are themselves in a leadership position. We might even look at this dynamic in the home, when women are often asked to take a supportive role towards men and are disproportionately given responsibilities such as household work and caregiving. When we notice things like this, it becomes easy to see why gender-based discrepancies manifest themselves even in gaming. It's not particularly a stretch to suggest that being constantly told to take backseat might make someone more incredible to play more games, which is a little bit more inward looking. Games that focus on storytelling and problem solving, which allow you a rare chance for control and autonomy and perhaps even escape, while men focus on games that fulfill the expectations put upon them to compete with and dominate others. Of course, this doesn't even address the more meta aspects of these gaming choices, such as what the marketing campaigns for such games are and how FPS titles have been in the past tended to add directly men while ignoring the lens of female gamers. Only in recent times have game developers tried to change this, and they've received plenty of backlash from male audiences for doing so. But while all these discussions about our culture and society would be absolutely valid, the idea that women don't like to compete or aren't interested in esports is actually not as true as we think it is. Mobile esports platforms Skills hosts a wide variety of games ranging from puzzles to card games and even action games. Skills report that 7 of the top earners in both 2017 and 2018 were in fact women in the video a while ago. The highest earning of this, a female player by the username of KMamba1090, managed to win herself a total prize pool of nearly $1.5 million in 2018, which would put her at number 6 in the ranking for highest earnings esport athlete in the world. Hardly evidence of luck of biological ability across esports as a whole. Women make up 35% of all players and 30% of all watchers, and this number is rapidly growing. For context, in 2016, only 23% of esports viewers were women, but they most definitely underrepresented in certain esports, particularly FPS games like CSGO and Rainbow Six Siege. Overwatch actually ranks highest in this regard with a population that's 26% female and yet might look at the highest level of play. Overwatch League and question why only one player amongst the total roster of hundreds is female. I mean, no evidence till date has proven and biological edge that men might have when it comes to operating a mouse and keyboards or more controller, and when it comes to cognitive capabilities have been proven to be also the same across genders. So what is really going on? This is where we return to our original discussion. And this is where we have to go beyond statistic and look at the reasons why women, despite clearly having an interest in gaming, despite clearly participating in esports, and despite having no inherent disadvantage and ability, are often shying away from games like Overwatch, Call of Duty, League of Legends, and even in PUBG Mobile, while embracing many others. And the conclusion we have to draw is because they're not made to feel welcome. In fact, they're actively harassed and gatekept away by hostile communities predominantly made up of men. Don't take it from me. If you're a guy watching this video, just ask any female player about the kind of things that they have been said to her and you will honestly be shocked. Or perhaps you won't. Perhaps you will feel like I said at the start of the video that such abuse is a normal part of gaming in general. Well, it's not. Because of being criticized for your gameplay, for something you did or something you said is a normal part of a competitive gaming. It's a normal part of competing in general. And even if you look at traditional sports, when you're in an environment where a lot is at stake, be that money, a victory, or just as our emotions will naturally boil over, and people will behave in toxic ways that they themselves will regret later. But being attacked for who you are, and in this case, simply for your gender, is not a normal part of anything. And yet, this is the experience of women playing online games. It may not happen to every single one of them, and it certainly doesn't happen to every single game. But the dominant experience of being a girl gamer is that of being harassed. The same cannot be said to men again. The statistic back this up. 65% of women report harassment when gaming and statistically receive 3 times as many derogatory or insulting remarks as men. I know immediately a lot of guys watching this video will say that they've been attacked and flamed in game for frivolous and sometimes not existent reason, and I am not putting that in doubt at all. Those feelings of hurt and belittlement are absolutely valid. We've all been receiving end of language that has made us feel horrible, but as men, it's not our collective experience to be attacked for our gender. If I'm a man, I will never enter a game and join voice chat only to be greeted by a chorus of, "A guy? Oh my god, a guy? A guy gamer? Do you have a Snapchat? We're gonna lose, we got a guy in our team." Well, when men are attacked in game, it is not because they are men. They are absolutely attacked for their play of their choice of hero or something they said, and sometimes none of those, but not specifically their gender, and distinction is an important one to make. Because women playing games are taxed specifically because they are women. They are singled out and made to feel alienated because the way they sound or their battle tag, or because the hero they are playing tells the harassers that this is a woman behind the screen, and that in return triggers a response where they feel they need to point out. And it always makes the targeted player realize that they are not considered as a gamer like anyone else. That they are other. That they are seen as an alien in this environment. At this stage, though, I should clarify one point. Does all this mean that male harassment doesn't exist? And does all this mean that gay and trans men and men with soft or high-pitched voice aren't attacked? Absolutely not. Any such men watching this video, or anyone who knows someone who fits the description, will allow all too well, and that they have been targeted often just because of the sound of their voice, or sometimes even just their hero choice. So the idea that they are also not victimized is categorically untrue. Male harassment does very much exist, and it's a very real problem that we must analyze, condemn, and stamp out. And it exists both on and off our computer screens. But again, there is this distinction between the causes and underlying reason why men are harassed when playing online games, and we can return to the evidence to see exactly why. The research tells us feminists Men, i.e., who had advocate for the rights of women, are more likely be the victim of sexual harassment. On top of this, sexual minority men were more likely to be engaged in feminist activity and thus doubtly targeted. Research tells us that men who are perceived as more feminine in male-dominated environments are more likely to be harassed and be the victim of unwanted sexual advances. As we've already discussed, FPS and other battle game is a very male-dominated environment, so the extension of the data is a simple one. What is the common denominator here? What is being attacked? Well, it's not masculinity, it's femininity and perceived proximity to femininity. What we can see from this is what many of us know anecdotally is that femininity is seen as both weak and unwanted in places like gaming. Women are obviously targeted as consequence, but even more men who are deemed to be too feminine are put in the firing line. Men with soft or high voice, gay men, and particularly gay men who are deemed to overtly display their homosexuality, these men are targeted but not because of their masculinity. They are being targeted because of their perceived lack of it. They are singled out because amongst hyper-masculine, male-dominated field of hardcore gaming, they are seen as representing undesirable qualities. They're too soft, too agreeable, too nice, too girly. All things that the traditional values of gaming culture does not tolerate. And this is why, again, we must return to original issue. It is not a sin to be a woman in gaming, and we need the gaming to realize this. Because the day that being a girl is no longer a reason to be targeted or attacked or harassed is the day that women can play the game with true freedom. And in that world, even being too close to femininity, being a man who isn't deemed to fit stereotypical masculine ideal will also no longer be a reason to be a target. Ultimately, and I think this is one of the things everyone can agree with, even if they dislike what I'm saying, want or watch to be played by everyone, and in the same goes to online games in general. We want everyone to feel welcome to pick up a controller or a mouse and keyboard and play games with their friends and make new ones as they go, no matter what they are and what. Yeah, no matter what they are, and we don't want any set of people to be singled out or attacked or be on the receiving end of consistent and persistent abuse simply for existing. But that is a long fight, and we have to win it at a step at a time. And this is the first step. So how do we combat this? Well, for a lot of people, their solution to sexism is to advocate for responding the same way they would be abused in general. Mute your mic, leave voice chat, and or block the offenders in a question. And while normally this is a good way to resolve conflict in the video games, where you'll only oversee the person for 20 odd minutes and then never again, most likely, it is absolutely not the right approach when it comes to discrimination, because in this case, silence only helps one person, the abuser. And what it says to the victim of abuse, in this case, women are being attacked simply of being women, is that there is no one on their side, that no one will help them. Having spoken to as many women as I could while researching this video, I asked for these thoughts on this issue, and one of the most dominant themes that emerged was this. What felt worse about the experience was that even if there was only one person being horrible in voice chat, the other players in the lobby would almost never speak up either, and that in truth is the greatest shame of our community, because there will always be assholes. There will always be horrible people who say anything they can for the sake of being hurtful and just for the sake of getting a reaction, but genuinely believe that these people who are deliberately malicious are the minority, and the chances are anyone who has stuck around with his video for this long is not like that. But if the majority of us remain silent when this goes on, then what good are we? Again, the research has shown that silence is not the right solution. Women on the receiving end of online abuse are more likely feel loneliness and anxiety than others. They're also likely to take steps to hide other identity and avoid all forms of communication in order to avoid being harassed. They frequently shift friends, groups, and are unable to build a lasting support system. Women watching this video will relate all too well with the act of not joining voice chat in the fear of being flamed, of not picking stereotypical female heroes, of not choosing battle tags that might hinder their gender identity. And each of these things that just shows us why women don't play FPS games and why they aren't more prominent in gaming in general, because gaming is pushing them away. Gaming is isolating them and making them think they're on their own, that there aren't others like them, and there isn't anyone who will support them, who will stand with them. It makes them think that they don't belong. This is what we need to eradicate. And if we want change, then the change has to come from us. We have to be better. To all men, please do better. From my end, I'm calling on everyone to speak up. Speak up when you see this happening. Speak up to tell the abusers that their behavior and their presence is not welcome in our community. Speak up and support of female players and let them know that they're not alone.